If I could give you 5 study tips to have the biggest positive effect on your grades, what would they be? Because there's literally hundreds of study strategies, productivity hacks, mindset techniques that you can implement out there, but what are the 5 most effective strategies out of all the hundreds of strategies I talk about on this channel? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Habit stacking. Habit stacking helps massively with consistency. So school and university shouldn't be this kind of constant battle with forcing yourself to wake up early and forcing yourself to study and constantly fighting off the feeling of wanting to procrastinate. You need to get to a point where you actually enjoy studying, where you like your life at school and university. You need to get to a place where your life is almost like this kind of flow state, where, like I mentioned earlier, you're swimming with the tide rather than against it. And that's where habit stacking comes in. So I've been thinking a lot about living life more intentionally and living life in a way that uses my time in the most productive and efficient way. So one of the most ingrained habits that I have is showering, right? So as soon as I wake up, the first thing I do is I have a shower. It's a habit that I've had pretty much every day of my life for more than 20 years. So it's a super strong habit. So habit stacking is about creating a new habit by stacking it on top of another habit that is already established. So when I shower, it usually takes about 20 minutes, so I'll put a short form audio summary on every single morning. And this morning I just finished reading 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. I've read the book before, but it's nice just to have kind of a quick recap with the short form summary. And it's these small strategies like habit stacking that can make your life that bit more streamlined and less stressful. And that's what you should be aiming for. Mindfulness. So obviously distractions are a major issue when it comes to extreme focus. Alongside procrastination, it's up there as one of the biggest obstacles that students face. So how do you combat this? How do you stop yourself from getting distracted when your mind just wants to wander somewhere else, right? And this is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment, while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings. So the first step to stopping yourself from getting distracted is actually realizing that you're getting distracted, right? Sometimes it can be really easy to be studying and then open a new tab and start procrastinating on something completely different that we don't even realize we're doing. We're almost in this kind of like zombie-like state of procrastination. So your mind needs to be in the present with your mind relaxed and focused on the work in front of you. And this is where mindfulness meditation can be extremely powerful. So I started meditating around 2018. And when you meditate, your mind starts to wander and you start to think about everything and anything. It's just natural. It's what your mind will automatically do if you just sit there essentially doing nothing, right? But what meditation teaches you is that when your mind starts to wander, you just slowly and calmly bring it back to the meditation. There's no judgment, no pressure, no stress. Just calmly bring your concentration back to the meditation. And after a while of meditating, you get really good at just bringing your mind back into focus. And it's the same principle when you're studying. When you're studying and you realize you're distracted, you just calmly and patiently bring your mind back to the task in front of you. And the more you do it, the better you'll become at staying focused for longer periods of time. And it's interesting because I think mindful studying is something that is quite overlooked. It's kind of a high level practice, if you like, that I think we're going to see more and more of over the next decade or so as we start to realize how powerful it can be. Take breaks. If you're going to be studying for long periods of time, I'm talking 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, then you need to be taking regular breaks. And the graph here shows how focused a student can stay over a period of time during a typical 60-minute study session. And the blue line shows how the student's concentration starts high, but it quickly starts to fall over a 60-minute period. The red line shows his performance if he took a short break during the 60-minute study session. And as you can see, at the end of the 60-minute study session, his performance is significantly higher because he took a short break. The yellow line shows the student's performance if he took 2 short breaks within the 60-minute period. And as expected, his performance is even higher than if he only took 1 break or if he didn't take any breaks at all. A great way of implementing structured breaks into your study sessions is by using the Pomodoro technique. And it's where you have a 25-minute, 100% focused study period followed by a 5-minute break. And there are a lot of really helpful apps in the App Store that guide you along the way and help you kind of stay on track. Just do make sure that when you do take breaks from studying, try to get up and move around. Maybe you can go for a walk or grab a coffee. Try to do something that will give your eyes a rest and something that is completely unrelated to your studying. So if you do find yourself burned out with no energy to continue studying, what do you do? Well, if you're at home or even at a quiet library, consider having a quick nap. Srini Pillai, professor at Harvard Medical School, wrote, "When your brain is in a slump, your clarity and creativity are compromised. After a 10-minute nap, studies show that you become much clearer and more alert. But if it's a creative task you have in front of you, you will likely need a full 90 minutes for more complete brain refreshing. Your brain requires this longer time to make more associations and dredge up ideas that are in the nooks and crannies of your memory network." The 3-step feedback system. So I created this 3-step feedback system at university because I knew I needed to do something drastically different to kind of shake me out of this procrastination trap that I was stuck in, because I knew that if I continued to procrastinate as much as I was, my grades would just stay the same, right? So this is the 3-step feedback system. Step 1, review your day's performance. So the main idea of this system is not to make a sudden massive change to your studying and go from studying, 2 hours a day to 10 hours a day overnight. That's not the point. What we're aiming for is to make tiny incremental improvements, but making those improvements every single day or every 2 days or every 3 days. So with step 1, the idea is that every night, just before you're about to go to bed, you review how productive you were that day. You review what went well and what didn't go so well, whether you procrastinated or maybe you got a lot done that day. And then you ask yourself, okay, so let's say you had a really productive day today. So why did you have a really productive day? What happened that made it productive? Maybe you woke up early, you started studying really early in the morning, or maybe you put your phone in another room where it wouldn't distract you. Because by figuring out what works for you, the next day you can then learn from that and keep doing those things. The things that you're doing that are making you unproductive, again, you can learn from these and make a point of not doing those the next day. So let me give you an example at high school. So at high school, I struggled to sit at my desk for even 15 minutes because I would just get distracted so easily. I mean, there were so many other things that I'd rather be doing, like playing video games, going out with friends, watching YouTube videos, and I'm sure we all know that feeling, right? But at the end of the day, when I reviewed how productive I was or how unproductive I was, I would notice that almost all my distractions came from my phone. I realized that if I had my phone next to me when I was studying, I would get distracted far faster than if I didn't have my phone. So I made 2 small changes. The first one was that I put my phone behind my laptop so I couldn't see it. So if I didn't have it in my line of sight, then I would be less likely to reach out for it and start procrastinating. And the second thing that I did was that I downloaded Pomodoro app on my phone. I'm using the Focus To Do app, which allows you to lock your phone when you want to be working or when you want to be studying for your 25-minute chunks. So it's these small changes that I implemented because every night before I went to sleep, I would review and learn from them. So imagine making a really small upgrade to your life every day. Over a week, it's probably not going to make much of a difference, but those incremental improvements every day, in a year's time, they're going to snowball into huge improvements. Step 2. Review your grades. So I've been stuck in this trap when I was at high school. I'd be getting pretty bad grades. Every exam, every assignment, every piece of homework, I'd get pretty bad grades. But here's the main problem. I never actually did anything about it. I'd be like, yeah, I could do better, but whatever, right? And because I wasn't doing anything about it, because I wasn't trying to improve my studying, either to study smarter or to study harder, my grades just stayed the same. However, this is something that I learned to improve at university. So whenever I got my assignment back or my exam results back, and obviously I'd be given a grade, right? Or a percentage for how many answers I got right. So I'd review it and I'd be like, okay, am I happy with this grade? And how can I do better for next time? It's really easy to kind of get complacent, especially when you're getting quite good grades, but at least in my opinion, you should always be pushing yourself to kind of reach that next level. And I remember getting my first grade back for the first assignment that I ever did in my first year at university, and I was given a 76%. Equivalent to a first class degree, 4.0 GPA, A grade, depending on whatever system you're using, but I received no feedback on my mark sheet. And I saw some of my classmates' mark sheets and they all received feedback. So I met with my lecturers later that day and I asked him for some feedback, and he read my paper again and he said, "That's really good, just keep doing what you're doing." And I pressed him further. I said, well, I received 76%, so there's still 24% of wrong in there. Eventually he gave me some points to work on, but it just goes to show how seriously I took constructive feedback and how keen I was to improve on the work that I was doing. So every grade you get back, you should be asking yourself, what can you be doing better for next time? What went well in the revision process? What didn't go so well? And it's funny because every single exam we had, I always see the same students that hadn't revised for the exam. So they had to cram in their revision the night before the exam. They'd often pull overnighters in the library so they wouldn't sleep. They'd just study the whole night for the exam that was at 9 a.m. in the morning. But it was funny because it was the same people for every exam that seemed to be making this same mistake. And surely it would be easier to just, I don't know, start studying earlier, right? Rather than having to pull overnighters. But by implementing this 3-step study system, you're always learning, you're always improving your studying process, so you're not going to fall into this trap of leaving all your revision until the night before. Because if you're using this system properly, then you shouldn't be making the same mistakes over and over again. Step 3, review your goals. The third step of the system is to make sure that you're constantly reviewing your performance and making sure that your performance is in line with your goals, because there's no point just setting a load of goals but then after a few days you forget about them, right? So I had one main goal at university, and that was to achieve a first class honours degree equivalent to a 4.0 GPA, A grade, whatever. So I had other sub goals, but that was my main goal that I prioritized above everything else. So I'd be constantly reviewing, asking myself, okay, am I studying on that level? Is it on the level of a 4.0 GPA? So if I continue studying like this, will I graduate with a 4.0 GPA? Because if the answer to that question is no, then I'd have to change something drastically so that I am studying in line with my goals. And I'm really impressed with the students that I coach that are kind of regularly monitoring and keeping track of their goals. A perfect example of this is a student in the private Transform Your Grades Facebook community posted, "I just started college about 8 weeks ago, and the first term is almost over. I found this first term to be not quite what I imagined. Right now, I'm still rushing to get the assignments done, and I recognize this could be a sign that I need to get back on track as soon as possible before this affects the second half of my first semester and beyond." And this is a perfect example of someone who, because he is constantly monitoring his performance, he just started college 8 weeks ago, he's realized that he's falling behind with his assignments, so he's taking massive action in joining the course and coaching sessions to turn his grades around. And I'm particularly impressed with this because a lot of students leave it until they're already failing their exams, and then they don't do anything about it. It's not until they're really backed into a corner and they have no other option, and that's when they do something about it. And this is what the 3-part feedback system is designed to do. I really want to get across this message that in order to really make the most of your education, you need to be constantly reviewing your performance and monitoring what you're doing well and what you're maybe not doing so well, and then constantly making small incremental tweaks that will compound into massive changes. Having that mindset, that growth mindset, is really an incredible thing to have, because once you have it, it can be applied to any area of your life. Your studying, your personal life, your career, your financial situation. I know this is cliche to say, but it really is a game changer. The Pareto principle. Now, I'm not going to talk about the Pareto principle too much because I talk about it quite a lot on this channel, but for the top 5 most effective advanced study tips, I really can't not talk about it. So The Pareto principle is also known as the 80-20 rule and suggests that 80% of outcomes results in 20% of the causes. So for example, it's very likely that 80% of the grade that you achieved comes from 20% of your studying. So you need to prioritize this 20%. But what exactly does this mean? When you're studying, there are some tasks that you'll be doing that are not that important. They won't directly help you with your final grades. And this is the 80% of your studying. These tasks can include background reading from your textbooks or completing homework assignments from the lecturer. And then there are the tasks that you do that directly affect your grades. And this is the 20% of your studying that you need to prioritize. And this involves answering past paper questions and consolidating and summarizing lecture notes in preparation for your revision. Your brain can only retain a certain amount of information before over time it starts to forget it, and late 19th century German psychologist Herbert Ebbinghaus dubbed this the forgetting curve. So if you're trying to make your studying as efficient as you can, it's important that you spend more time focusing on the study areas that will directly affect your exam paper. And this often means you don't need to read whole textbooks, but rather just focus on areas that you think may come up in the exam. And if you are struggling with short attention span and staying focused on the task in front of you, I made a video a few weeks back on how to study with extreme focus. I go into more detail about it, why it's so important to enter into a state of flow, because that's really when most of us do our best work, right? You can click on the video on the screen. Alternatively, I made another video on how waking up at 4:45 a.m. doubled my productivity.